Well, the high cost of living continues to rise in South Africa, with fees increasing, load shedding, and now Nersa expected to announce its decision on Eskom tariffs. South Africans may have to dig deeper in their pockets. To take this discussion further, then, when I joined via Zoom by University of Johannesburg Associate Economics Professor, Mr. Peter Baur. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so very much for joining us here on SABC News.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation.
You're most welcome. Prof, it's the beginning of the year, and, there's a lot to do this time of the year. Children are going to schools, school fees are up, everything is going up, and financially it's a demanding time. What is your take on these issues and how best, South Africans in general can prepare for this challenging time in general?
Yes, I think we are headed for a very difficult time now, especially if we combine it with what is actually happening in terms of the increase in the tariffs, the possible increase in Eskom tariffs, and of course the school fees and the rising school fees. One of the key considerations that we have is that with school fees prices going up, we're finding that many households who are also financially constrained and have their children in private sector, for example, are putting their children over to the government sector or government schools. And this is actually going to increase pressure on the government schools to accommodate the additional students coming into the system.
Yeah.
Key worries in the moment is it focuses particularly on, if you're looking at the cost of households that they have to face, we really are worried about how that's going to impact on elderly people or people who are paying rent. And of course, the poor people in the country are going to experience a greater impact of these kind of increases.
Yeah. And of course, the big one that we're anticipating now, in fact, within the next hour, we're expecting an announcement by Nersa around tariffs regarding Eskom. Does this increase make, financial sense? Well, financial sense certainly for Eskom, who'd want to have more money, but really for the South African public, who are at the same time saying, well, first of all, we're not getting the service, we're supposed to be getting out of Eskom to begin with. And then on top of it, wanting to increase tariffs on a service that's simply not actually we're getting. What are your thoughts on this? And what do you anticipate that, when we get this announcement in the next hour, what Nersa will actually say and what they'll decide?
Yeah, the power utilities are definitely under pressure. There's a lot of infrastructure investment that is required. And then if you're going to take a look at the compounding impact of, shall we say, cable theft or infrastructural damage or, shall we say, power stations being temporarily closed, these are all additional costs that these prices need to be recouped. And then, of course, you've got the problem of people not paying for electricity, which is going to put additional pressure on municipalities as well. So we can expect... internationally, we've seen energy prices starting to come down again, especially after what happened last year with Ukraine. So we know that the cost of energy for South Africans is going to go up. We know that Eskom is sitting with huge costs associated with the delivery of this energy, and it has to come. We will expect an increase in these tariffs. We can expect that, but the thing is, with regard to the households and how households are going to cope, becomes a very serious issue, because this is definitely going to filter right back, not just to the household, but this is going to impact on businesses, the cost of doing businesses, and also what we're going to see is the transfer of that cost back down to increasing demand for increasing wages, and of course the inflationary pressure that is going to be associated with this.
I mean, the irony of it all, Prof, is that people are saying we're unable actually to make a living due to the fact that, we're experiencing load shedding. Some SMMEs have complained and said, listen, they might even have to close shop. The impact of load shedding has been massive, in various aspects of business. In terms of these businesses that are complaining about, even, struggling to stay open, how should they proceed going forward, especially if this tariff increase is indeed implemented? How do they ensure that there's no loss and then them having to ultimately just shut down?
Absolutely. And the risk of this is a very real risk that we're now facing in South Africa. And beyond that, we're also taking a look at how this is going to impact on investor confidence. When investors are looking at South Africa, seeing this irregular supply, and then seeing, of course, the increasing costs associated with it. And businesses are going to have to find ways in which to mitigate this. But we know that we cannot continue to drive this economy, to drive the growth that we so desperately need, to reduce the unemployment problems that we're experiencing in the country, and we with intermittent energy supplies. And so a very determined step to convince, shall we say, convince the public sector that these steps need to be taken, but rather urgently, even if they are finding ways of bringing the private sector on board, perhaps in involving private sector investment into working parallel or working together with Eskom to try and resolve some of these issues. And I really do think that we need to take the pressure away from the state-owned parastatal and move that across to the private sector, because I believe that the private sector will have a large contribution to make to the economy in helping us resolve some of these issues. The other factor where we need to look at is how long is it going to take us to resolve this problem? If it's going to take us 10 years or 15 years to try and solve this or bring us back to a normal grid delivery situation, these timeframes are also very, very seriously going to impact on future investment decisions. And then it's also going to impact on households as well. Younger people with skills maybe finding alternatives to choose lifestyles overseas. So we may even impact on the brain drain. And of course, it impacts on every single sector of the South African economy. So from unskilled right through to the high skilled people within our economy.
All right, Professor Baur, thank you very much for giving us your time. That is University of Johannesburg Associate Economics Professor Peter Baur speaking to us there on the back, of course, of South Africans having to deal with the issue of the high cost of living. And certainly in the next hour, we'll then hear from Nersa whether they have indeed granted permission to give Eskom, of course, that tariff increase that they sought.